Okay, I think it's working now. Yeah, sorry guys. Fellow Falcoholics, welcome to another Falcons training camp recap. We are here on day 5 of training camp, the first padded practice of Atlanta's training camp, to break down all the important news from today's practice and answer some of your guys' questions as well. I was at practice today, finally got on the field for the media tent, took some videos for you, so I hope you guys enjoyed those. And I am joined by my co-host. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way, who's also spent a fair amount of time at training camp this year. Adnan, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. Training camp has come. It's fun to talk about, but now I'm ready to move on to the next step and then, the next one after that.
Yes. Well, mercifully, training camp is brief, and then it's right into the preseason, and then right into the regular season. And it's even shorter this year because there's only 3 preseason games. So we're not. I mean, we're like less than 40 days away from the regular season kicking off now. So not too much time till we see some real action.
Yeah, it'll be even shorter in the coming years. I
Yep.
wouldn't be
Yep.
surprised if they took away another preseason game and made it 18.
They're talking about it, so it's certainly on the table. But yeah, guys, again, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't been here before, we are from thefalcoholic.com, SB Nation's Atlanta Falcons site. That is the place for all your Falcons content. Make sure you give me, Falcoholic Kevin, the show, Falcoholic Live, and Adnan at Say Which Way on Twitter follows. And please do like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. And feel free to throw any questions you have in the chat. We will try to get as many of them as we can throughout today's episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. So, all right, well, let's just, right off the top, the biggest story from today was that, the Falcons were in pads for the first time. That obviously changes things. It wasn't, I would say, full contact in terms of there wasn't, total tackling or anything like that. But there was allowed to be contact in coverage, and pass breakups were more physical. I would say the coverage was more physical in general. We got to see a lot of that sort of stuff. Sometimes that changes things for players that have been impressing early, but one player that it absolutely didn't change things for at all was Kyle Pitts, who had by far the strongest day of any player. He caught, I think, 2-3 touchdown passes throughout 11 on 11 and 7 on 7 practices. He had that great sort of jumping catch in tight coverage that he was able to bring in and move into a touchdown, obviously. So Adnan, how do you feel knowing that Kyle Pitts thus far is living up to the hype?
Relieved a little bit just because, you know, we came into this knowing that Kyle Pitts was the highest drafted tight end of all time. That distinction previously belonged to Vernon Davis with the 49ers, I think, in 2006. Kyle Pitts went number 4. He is one of the, if not the most anticipated tight end of all time coming into the NFL out of college. And, we know the tale of the tape with Kyle Pitts. We know about his length. We know about his speed. We know about his tools. And training camp is kind of, the perfect setting for him to showcase all of that.
Yeah.
And, it would have been a really bad thing, and I'd be really nervous right now if we were sitting here and we just made no mention about Kyle Pitts at all over the weekend and these past few days and are saying, oh, like, where's Kyle Pitts been? He's just been, a Jag, just another guy. But, the fact that he's standing out, I don't think it's a surprise just because, this is the setting for those athletic freaks. But at the same time, just because it's not a surprise doesn't mean that you're not relieved about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I certainly do remember like Vic Beasley, for instance, having a really really quiet start to camp, and obviously had a fairly quiet rookie season, and then a really great second season, and then no more good seasons after that, unfortunately. But it's not a given that first round picks do immediately come into camp and impress. I know a lot of people are kind of treating it, Kyle Pitts, is just like kind of a given that he was going to be good, and maybe he was that much of a layup in terms of a pick based on his college evaluation. But certainly Pitts has been doing everything you could ask of him thus far. Has been the flashiest player at training camp. He's already Matt Ryan's favorite target in the passing game. I believe he's been targeted more than anyone else, and it's worth noting that Calvin Ridley is full go according to him, but they are not giving him a full complement of reps. So he's healthy, but they're trying to limit him a little bit in terms of how many snaps he's taking. And I think that makes sense. I think they're trying to work in a lot of other guys to the formations as well. But it's so Kyle Pitts probably getting more targets than he would if Ridley was like also in there, but just something worth pointing out. But on the same note of impressive catches, arguably the most impressive actual catch today was made by Christian Blake, who is a favorite of the Athletics' Tori McElhaney, who has been pressing her quite a bit. I don't know if you've seen the clip, Nan, but what do you think about Christian Blake's chances of actually making the roster this year? He's managed to hang around each of the last few years, so.
I think they're larger now than they were before, just because he came in as an incumbent along with Olamide Zaccheaus in that wide receiver competition. And again, as we noted, Russell Gage and Calvin Ridley aren't part of that wide receiver competition. They're above that wide receiver competition. It's because that's the reason why they were off to the side with the quarterbacks all weekend catching passes, while the other wide receivers were running their own drills. So Blake is someone who's been around the team. He has some chemistry with Matt Ryan. He has some, familiarity with the team. And I think that gave him, a decent chance coming in. I think it would have been a much larger chance if Dirk Cutter was still here, because, he would have known what the playbook was. Right now, everyone's learning from this brand new playbook that Arthur Smith brought in. However, the emergence of Trammell and, the signing of Jamon Moore, that kind of gives me a bit of a pause when it comes to Christian Blake, because Olamide Zaccheaus right now is head and shoulders, I think, in the lead for that wide receiver 3 position, for that slot position, just because of how good he has been. I think he was the standout wide receiver of the weekend. So, I don't know, because if Chris Rowland or Austin Trammell, they're competing for punt returning duties as well. So let's say if Rowland wins that job, so that's 4 wide receiver spots already taken away when you count Zaccheaus, Gage, and Ridley. Then you have Austin Trammell, who's looked more impressive than Blake this past weekend. Then you have Jamon Moore, who, while he hasn't looked more impressive, he's still that bigger bodied wide receiver that, the coaching staff seems to have gone out specifically to get. That's 6 wide receivers on the roster right there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it starts to get a bit more iffy with Blake. So, I don't want to say anything like right now, anything distinctive, just because we have the entire preseason ahead of us and it's going to be a hell of a competition.
Right.
And, it's a lot different when it's game time as opposed to when players are in shorts and pressing. But yeah, right now, I'd say that Christian Blake's chances of making the roster, I'd say, are probably just a bit lower than they were at this time last week.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the emergence of guys, like you said, Austin Trammell, who had a pretty quiet day today. I can't say for sure because I was watching a lot of other players. I didn't see Trammell much in the 11-on-11 sessions towards the end of practice, so that was making me question if possibly he left with an injury or something like that. I'm not sure. He may have been working out with like the second and third team on the other field, and I just didn't notice. So that's something to keep in mind over the next couple days. If we don't see him, that would be unfortunate. But at this time, not willing to say that he is missing practice, just that I didn't necessarily see him much today. I think Arthur Smith made it clear in his press conference that he's going to work in everyone. Like if you put in the work and you impress with the threes, they've kind of got to clarify for people, they've got it set up in such a way that sort of the ones and the twos in 11-on-11 kind of just rotate like all the time. Like every other play, there's going to be people coming in and out. And you've got a mix of starters and second string guys basically every single play. And then there's kind of like the third and fourth string that's on a separate field. And I think what Arthur Smith is doing is saying, if you impress in that third, fourth string group, we're going to work you into the ones and twos. You might not get a bunch of snaps, but we're going to give you a chance. And they certainly are doing that. Austin Trammell was a beneficiary of that early this weekend. Today, Jawan Green was getting some work with the ones and twos at wide receiver. Christian Blake obviously was another one. We've seen Chris Rowland get some work there as well. So it's really, I mean, it's pretty. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The other wide receiver name is Frank Darby, but
Yes, yes, yes.
I kind of hesitated on just mentioning him just because he didn't stand out at all. He hasn't stood out at all training camp. And I'd say right now he's probably a little bit behind the eight ball when it comes to roster construction at this very moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think yesterday or Sunday was his most impressive day, and he had a couple good catches there. Um, And I think it's just really hard to stand out right now because so many players are doing a good job. We've talked about 5 receivers already, and that doesn't even count the top 3. Zacchaeus is, I think, firmly wide receiver 3. At this point, he seems just kind of head and shoulders above everyone else, and it seems like how they're treating him in terms of reps is indicating that as well. Like he is not taking snaps with the third and fourth string. He is firmly taking snaps with the ones and twos at worst. So it's just a really fierce competition. And it's been pretty quiet for other guys that we have interest in, like Tajay Sharp and Jamon Moore. I think Sharp looked a little bit more impressive today with the pads on, was able to use a little more physicality. Jamon Moore was back on the field today after having to miss, I think, half of Sunday's practice with what appeared to be maybe cramps. So hopefully it was just a minor thing. He was playing today full speed. So, there's just so many good guys, and none of them are necessarily like great wide receiver 2 type guys, but I think they're all guys worthy of being on an NFL roster. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they do keep 6, because I think, we've talked about it on the show, you and I, and about, the likelihood of them keeping just 5 because they have Cordarrelle Patterson. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they're tempted to keep a 6th guy, or if they do keep 2 or 3 of them on the practice squad because they just don't want to let these guys out of the building. Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, and I know, I know. Just for the record, they're not keeping more than 6. Like
No, they're not keeping more than 6. Definitely not.
We're not. Before anyone asks, it doesn't matter how good the wide receiver grouping is, how impressive they are. You're not going into the regular season keeping 7 wide receivers, especially like Kevin mentioned. You have Cordarrelle Patterson there, who's I guess technically a running back on the depth chart right now,
Mm-hmm.
but he can easily like shift over and play wide receiver. That was his natural position coming into the league. And, you're probably going to have maybe 4 running backs, I'd say right now, counting Cordarrelle Patterson, just because of how good Javion Hawkins looks. Ollison is getting some run with the ones. And of course, there's Mike Davis, who is your number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speaking of the running backs, I know we had a question from Grant Watson about how many running backs we think they're going to keep on the 53. And that depends on, do you count fullbacks in that number? And, do you consider Cordarrelle Patterson a running back? The team certainly does. So if you're talking about pure running backs, I think it's going to be 4. And I think it's pretty clear who those 4 are already. And I think Caleb Huntley did get some run today and looked good, but he has to compete with Quadri Ollison, who kind of seems to be penciled in as the running back 2 right now. And by how he's played thus far in camp, Ollison seems like he's earned it. I mean, he seems like he's much more comfortable in this system as opposed to Dirk Cutter's system, whatever the hell that was. But, I think it's going to be Mike Davis, Quadri Ollison, Cordarrelle Patterson, Javion Hawkins. Javion Hawkins has been a standout as well. And he's benefiting from the fact that the team really hasn't brought in any more competition for his role. He's the burner at running back. He's kind of the change of pace, quick guy, and they cut Tony Brooks-James. So,
and that can segue us into the next thing because the team is looking at D'Onta Foreman.
Yep.
And that's another name where this will be a stiffer running back competition than in recent years, I'd say.
Yeah.
And with Foreman, he's that big-bodied guy. I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble just visualizing, who would get the short end of the stick if the team did bring in D'Onta Foreman and if they went into the regular season with him, because the team really likes Cordarrelle Patterson, I'd say,
yeah,
as the primary kick returner. And I saw in Sunday's practice, he got a number of touches with the first
Yep.
team in a row. Like they were scheming the ball into his hands. So I'd say Patterson's safe.
Yeah.
Davion Hawkins has impressed me, but would they look toward going toward the veteran and Deontay Foreman over Hawkins when Hawkins specializes in that skill set that you don't really have on the roster with your other running backs? None of
Yeah.
the other guys are really burners like that. So,
No, no.
would it be Quadri Allison who's potentially a surprise cut if they brought in Foreman?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would maybe be the. I mean, I guess I would still think it's probably Hawkins who's the most likely cut if they just love Deontay Foreman. But I mean, to me, I think it's more of a camp body thing. They did cut Tony Brooks James. They've only got 5 running backs total under contract. Most teams in the preseason are going to carry 6 or more. So, it might be that they're just looking to get a look at some guys, looking to have a couple of other running backs out there to take carries in the preseason. I love Deontay Foreman coming out. And I think he had a chance to be a special running back, and then he tore his Achilles, and it's just so hard to come back from that as a running back. I don't think it's really ever been done successfully. So definitely interested to see what Foreman could bring. They haven't officially signed him yet. They're just visiting with him. But if he does come in, I mean, you're right. He's probably more directly competing with like Caleb Huntley and Quadri Olison. I just have a hard time seeing anyone displacing Olison because the coaching staff seems to have so much faith in him right now. I mean, they're running him with the ones. He's the guy getting the second most carries of any running back right now. So it's interesting how much this coaching staff seems to like Olison, despite the fact that they didn't draft him, whereas the last coaching staff seemed to completely not like him at all, and they were the ones that spent a damn pick on him. So, it's just weird, man. But I mean, I can't explain it, but
Yeah,
that's
it was a pretty high pick too. It was like a high day 3 pick. It wasn't just like,
it was a fifth. It was early fifth. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't like, us doing a mock draft and we're like, all right, let's just get this over with.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting, but yeah, I mean, pretty clearly Olison is ahead of the pack there, and I like Hawkins as well. He had some impressive plays today too. Even with the pads on, I mean, I think it's hard to tell sometimes with these runs because there's no full tackling, but guys will grab and stop you, and Hawkins didn't get stopped. I kind of lost sight of him behind the pile, but he kind of made some nifty moves and got out there in space and scored another touchdown. And it's like, if it was full contact, I don't know if he would have escaped or not, but still impressive he's shifty and he's really damn fast when he gets out in the open field. I mean, he made Isaiah Oliver look silly. I think Oliver was kind of the backside contain on that, and he just kind of outran him to the end zone there. And please don't use this as an excuse to dunk on Oliver. Oliver has been mostly fine. Just, just pointing out that he beat a starting caliber corner there. But speaking of the defense, it's worth talking about the defense because I think the defense was very impressive. The defense is going to have an advantage early on because it's a new offense, a new install. Everyone's kind of getting used to it. But we did see a couple more turnovers today. Eric Harris, the safety, had a very nice pick where he read the play the whole way, broke on the ball and was able to kind of pick it off and jump in front of the pass. And then Foye Oluokun, excuse me, was able to rip out a ball on a run play and get the forced fumble and recovery himself, which of course he was great at last year. So it seems like that trend's continuing. But now, what do you think about the defense really seeming to emphasize creating turnovers this year, and how important is that going to be for a unit that maybe is going to rely on that a little bit more than you'd want to?
Oh, it's going to be a game changer for the defense, and it's really nice to see that they're doing this in camp because again, the defense is supposed to have the advantage early on in camp, but that doesn't always mean that it's going to translate like that. So it's really nice to see that that's happening. And you said it, the defense, they're going to have to force a lot of turnovers this season just because this unit isn't very talented, relatively speaking. When you look at the other defensive units around the NFL, I'd say that this would probably be a bottom 10 defense in the league when it comes to pure talent. but probably a bit better with coaching because we've seen what Dean Pease has been able to do with defenses whose talent levels weren't really all there. We saw that with the Titans a couple of years ago. So definitely if the defense can be a plus unit when it comes to forcing turnovers, and they were not that last year, they weren't even close to that last season, then, that's going to go a very, very long way in helping this team possibly secure a playoff spot this season because, that's forcing turnovers. That's your ace in the hole for this defense because you're not going to out yardage other teams
Right.
throughout the course of the season. You may be able to here and there, but it's not going to be a consistent thing. And if it is, then I'll be very impressed and I'll be very, very happy with you.
Just make Dean Pease statue right. Okay, so. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's smart of the Falcons to sort of emphasize turnovers. They're the great equalizer, right? They can make the offense look terrible and the worst defense look competent. You get enough turnovers and things change. So I think it's smart of them to emphasize trying to create turnovers and being aggressive this year because I don't think they can just play straight up and play conservatively or play a more balanced style and hope to compete because of the aforementioned talent issues, particularly in the pass rush. But speaking of the pass rush and the defensive line, we did get to see a few more players rotate in there. Dante Fowler's still out. We haven't seen him at all yet. But we did get to see a couple of rookies get on the first team more in today's sessions. Adetokunbo Ogundiji and Taquan Graham were both rotating in with the ones, along with nose tackle Chris Slayton, as Tyeler Davison apparently missed today's practice. I actually didn't notice it till afterwards when Arthur Smith mentioned it, but Tyeler Davison was actually not at practice today. Apparently a minor thing that they're just kind of monitoring, but he didn't seem to think he would miss a lot of time. But we did see Chris Slayton actually appear to be the first man up at nose tackle behind Tyler Davison. We also saw other guys like Deidre Sanat get some work there. We saw Olive Sagapolu as well. So there were a lot of young guys getting worked in there. What do you think about those two rookies? Jonathan Bullard's another name, the veteran, was getting a lot of run with the ones today. But yeah, on how big of a deal is it that guys like Ogundiji and Taquan Graham, make an impact this year based on the depth we have at defensive line?
I mean, it's what depth at defensive line?
Right. I mean, I think the depth is okay, the depth is fine, but the starters are a disaster. So
yeah, so it's one of those things where anytime you can have, late day 3 picks, late day 3 rookies contribute at any level, even if it's just special teams, then that's an absolute success. So, it's one of those things where I'm not really counting on it happening, but the fact that they are getting, some run with the ones, I applaud Dean Pease and the coaching staff for giving them that opportunity. You always like seeing younger players get that chance. It's something that we absolutely went after Mike Smith for late in his tenure here, never giving the young guys any opportunity. So the fact that Ogundiji, I'm sorry, I'm really gonna have to work.
I think it's Ogundiji, but I don't honestly know. So if anybody knows Ogundiji and is able to tell us how to pronounce his name, that would be appreciated. But yeah.
Maybe we can have him on the show eventually. So that'll be fun to ask him directly. But
yeah,
him making any sort of a contribution to this edge group, and kind of raising its ceiling a little bit, that would be a boon. It would be huge. It would be, it's a plus for either him or Taquan Graham to really do anything on this defensive unit this season. And it's still training camp, so I wouldn't really, take it to the bank that these guys are going to be massive contributors along your defensive line, especially when everyone's healthy, when Dante Fowler is back. But, it's definitely a nice thing to see that the young guys get their opportunities and, to have that chance to impress the coaching staff, because not everyone has that chance. And, maybe you realize that you have something there, and, that would be massive for this defensive unit to have that bit of an influx in young players that we don't expect to be very successful and to be massive contributors, especially in year one. Maybe that even raises the defensive ceiling just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly possible. And I know we had another question, about Deidrin Sanat, and like honestly, like I could have sworn I saw 94 out there today, and I think I even said that I saw Sanat. But he still is allegedly on the pup list. So, and I
Maybe they
thought
gave
we
his
were.
number away.
What's that?
Maybe they gave his number away.
Maybe I don't see it on the roster. I was looking, but like yeah, so I'm pretty sure I saw 94. I could be wrong. And maybe they did give the number to somebody else, but yeah, I mean, he's allegedly on pup, and based on Arthur Smith's comments early in camp, he didn't think he was going to be back at all for camp. So I don't imagine we're going to see Sanat. I thought I did, but I think that must have been another player, or I'm just blind or something like that. But yeah, as far as I know, Sanat is kind of tabbed to miss training camp with his, I think he said it was an upper body injury of some kind, which is unfortunate, but
Well,
I
that'll probably
think
do it
that's,
for him if he misses training camp completely.
yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But yeah, there were a couple other things that I thought were really interesting. We did see the young offensive lineman, I think, look good today. We since it's for the first contact practice, there was actual blocking going on, which of course is nice to see. It's exciting. And Jalen Mayfield, I think, held his own at right tackle. He looked like he belonged with the ones. We also saw Drew Dahlman getting some first team reps today at left guard. I wouldn't say it was the majority of reps, but he was getting mixed in there after kind of being stuck with the twos most of the time. And I thought he acquitted himself pretty well there. Josh Andrews also wasn't, alarmingly poor or anything like that. But honestly, the most impressive player to me on that young offensive line, outside of Chris Lindstrom and Jake Matthews, who are obviously great, is Matt Hennessy, who I think he's entrenched at starting center. He looked like he was directing the offensive line with authority, with confidence. Obviously, he has really high end athleticism. He was moving really well. Just handling his business there at center, which is a great thing to see for the Falcons. Not having Alex Mack anymore, they needed someone to step up and be a leader on that offensive line. It reminds me of what he looked like at Temple, where he was very much the leader of that offensive line, and I think he's kind of growing into that role in Atlanta. So Adna, what are your thoughts on this young offensive line and and how these guys are looking thus far in training camp?
I mean, it's another thing we talked about it leading into training camp. You really need this is the unit that really makes you most nervous outside of the edge group, because it doesn't matter how good the offense is, it doesn't matter how good Kyle Pitts is, how good Arthur Smith is at scheming things up. All of that goes to shit if the offensive line sucks. So the fact that the young guys are doing so well, like I mentioned it, you expected Kyle Pitts to do well in training camp. This isn't something I was outright expecting. If you had come to me before training camp and said, Jalen Mayfield is going to look really good at right tackle, Matt Hennessy is going to look very sound at center, Dahlman's going to look very positive, I would have been incredibly excited.
Yeah.
Whereas if you came to me before training camp and said, "Oh, Kyle Pitts is going to show out," it would be like, "All right, thank God,"
Yeah.
because
Thank God we didn't blow it. Yeah.
yes, because this offensive line, there's three major question marks on this offensive line, and that's at center, left guard, and right tackle. And yes, that absolutely includes Kaleb McGary. He's really done nothing in his NFL career to suggest that he's a stabilizing force at the right tackle position, the way that Lindstrom and Jake Matthews have shown that they can be stabilizing forces at their respective positions. So, if Jalen Mayfield shows out, it's just like with the young defensive linemen. If you can get a positive contribution from these offensive linemen, it would be even bigger, because, along the offensive line, you play every single snap, whereas Ogundeji and Taquan Smith would be, kind of rotational pieces rotating in. If Mayfield can, show out and play well along the offensive line, Doesn't matter what position that is. If that's right tackle, if he beats out Kaleb McGary for right tackle, well, one, that would show that McGary was, a pretty big bust at that position. But, you have to start the best possible players, the best possible pieces. And it's still very early. I'm just talking hypotheticals here.
Yeah, yeah,
But, if Drew Dahlman or if Drew Dahlman possibly wins that competition at left guard, that would be very big as well, because I think right now we're rooting for these young offensive linemen to kind of win this competition at left guard,
yeah,
because
yeah.
the alternatives suck. The alternatives aren't really there.
Yeah,
And
I mean, yeah,
with Hennessy as well, you really really want him to have a good year. Like, you're rooting for him to have a good year because we need him to have a good year at the center position. He wasn't really that positive last year when he was put into the guard position, but then again he was given a bad hand, having to deal with Tampa Bay and with Kansas City and
yeah.
their all world defensive tackles.
I mean, you couldn't have picked more difficult matchups for him to start his career against freaking Chris Jones and Vita Vea. I mean, it's rough, man.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, definitely. I would love it if Hennessy just continues carrying on that Alex Mack legacy of being that steady center. Because we've spent a lot of draft picks on offensive linemen the past few years,
Yeah,
and we really need more of them to hit than not,
yeah,
because the last thing you want to do is continue using up your draft capital on offensive linemen in the years to come, because you have a lot of other positions of need, especially along that defensive unit. So, I'm rooting for these young offensive linemen because I need to be rooting for these young offensive linemen.
yeah. It's just exciting to see these guys excel, and we're really not gonna have a great look at these guys until we see the preseason games, because look, I mean, it's not full contact. There is some contact now with the pads on. It's not full go. People in the chat have pointed it out. The Falcons' edge rushers are not particularly good, but I think the interior guys are pretty good. So I think what we're seeing in terms of positive play from the interior, seeing guys like Josh Andrews and Matt Hennessy not look terrible against the Falcons' interior, which I think is pretty good. Um, I think that's encouraging. The tackles, I don't think we really know. I think we know Jake Matthews is fine at worst. And, I think we've seen that Jalen Mayfield is at least okay, but we're waiting to
And,
see still. So,
and remember, guys, this was the first padded practice. We're just
yeah,
speaking in hypotheticals about the offensive line being good, which we hope it will be.
at
But
least passable.
take everything with a grain of salt right
Yeah,
now, because we won't be able to really evaluate the O line until the preseason at
yeah,
the very
yeah,
least, because
yeah.
they're not going to be running Oklahoma drills against Grady Jarrett.
No, no. Yeah, and I mean, I think what you've said about McGary is fair. In that he hasn't, whereas we've seen Jake Matthews, Chris Lindstrom sort of take those jobs and just kind of run with them, and it's like we have no questions about those guys anymore. McGary's been a little shakier. That rookie year obviously was not good. It was extremely volatile. I think last year was better. I think he was about a league average starter there. But like for a first round pick that you traded up for, you're hoping for more than average. So, I think if he can get back on the field quickly, which we're going to talk about right now, I think McGary certainly has the potential to be a good right tackle, particularly in a scheme like this, which I think suits his strengths a little bit better. But we need to see him, and we haven't gotten to see him at all yet. But I did ask Arthur Smith. I worked up the courage to actually talk to Arthur Smith. He seems very secretive about injuries, so I was like, I'm going to ask this dude straight up if he has anything to say about Kaleb McGary, and he was actually very nice. Arthur Smith was very nice to me. So shout out to Arthur Smith. He seems kind of intimidating, but he's actually a nice guy. But yeah, he didn't reveal anything specific, but from his tone and the thing that he said to me specifically, I don't think McGary's going to be out much longer. I think we will see McGary soon. I don't know if it'll be by the first preseason game or not, but I don't think it's something that's going to linger into the season. I think we will see him at some point during the preseason. which, as Vlad pointed out in the chat, like that's important for McGary because if Mayfield plays the whole preseason and is good or better, are they just going to hand McGary the job back? I don't think so. So it's kind of like he needs to get on the field soon. And I know someone asked like if it's possible that Kaleb's absence has to do with COVID or a vaccination sort of thing. And I would say that we don't know, but I think the answer is probably no, because if it was COVID related, he would be on the COVID list. There's a specific protocol for players that have anything to do with COVID, including close contacts and things like that, where you would be put on the COVID list. So I don't think McGary has to do with COVID. I think it's more likely to be some sort of minor training injury, perhaps, or conditioning that's causing a problem. Maybe an illness even, you just never really know. But it's not COVID, because if it was COVID, he'd be on the COVID list. So that's kind of, I think, where we're standing with him. And then also, we talked about Tyeler Davison. From what Coach said, doesn't sound like Davison's going to be out long at all, but he did miss practice today. So, what do you think about the possible timeline of McGary coming back? And does he need to come back before the, end of the preseason to hold on to his job, Adnan?
I think right now his job is secure, but if Mayfield comes out just like gangbusters in the preseason, then the possibility is definitely there of Mayfield usurping McGary for the right tackle job. Because remember, this front office, they drafted Jalen Mayfield. They didn't draft Kaleb McGary. They did not trade up for Kaleb McGary. Like, it would not be an indictment on them at all if Kaleb McGary flames out and isn't a starter come week one. That's an indictment on Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff. So, they don't really have that, that bit of pressure, that bit of bias toward the player that they pick themselves, and that exists in the NFL.
Yeah.
We could pretend like coaches, like they'll always give it to the most deserving candidate, but no, that bit of bias exists, and they will generally favor the guy that they spent draft capital on, if for no other reason than it looks bad on them. If
smarter if they do.
Yes. Yep. And it makes them look dumber if they just wasted that capital. So, I think that the possibility, there's a non-zero possibility that, Jalen Mayfield is the right tackle on this team come week one. Would I bet on it? Would I say that that's probable? No. But it's definitely within the realm of possibility, just because McGary isn't Jake Matthews, to where, all right, if Matthews was out throughout the preseason, it's like, all right, you're still penciling him in as a starter. However, if Mayfield, if he plays really, really well, then, why would you give McGary that job? Just based on his name, just based on what he's done. He hasn't done much in the NFL. So, there's a chance.
Yeah.
And, it would be a bad look for McGary if he lost that starting job, even if it has nothing to do with him, in that he didn't play poorly in the preseason, if he missed the preseason. Because in the NFL, it happens all the time. You miss time, someone else can swoop in and take your job just like that.
Yeah. It happens, man, and it's sad for the eyes, and certainly, want everyone to be able to get on the field and compete, but it just, we don't have a choice of when injuries strike, and it can be, the NFL stands for not for long, right? So it can be real tough there for those guys. But everybody commenting on the room I'm in, okay, like, hey, I'm very appreciative of my relatives here in Snellville for letting me stay here. They cleared out space for me in their home. The internet is just strong enough to do the show. That's all I can ask for, folks. So comments do make me laugh. That is funny, guys. Thank you for the laugh. So Jerron Wade says, what's happening with Felipe Franks? Heard something happened to him. I didn't see anything happen to him. He was up until the end of practice. So unless it happened after practice, I can't recall anything. He had a good session. They were letting Franks get in on that 1-2 rotation at the end. That final 11-on-11, Franks was able to get some reps there. He didn't, initially wasn't getting many reps there at all. So Franks delivered a very good throw to Christian Blake, which is sort of one of the best throws of the day, one of the best catches of the day, where Blake, fought through a hold from Kendall Sheffield and still made the play. So I thought Franks had a pretty good day. He's clearly behind McCarron right now on the pecking order. McCarron, I don't think McCarron has been like a standout, but I think he's made the correct reads and made good solid throws basically whenever he's been in there. So I think in terms of a backup, he's going to have the advantage because I think he's reliable. He's got the NFL experience, but definitely worth monitoring Franks over the remainder of the training camp and preseason to see if anything else develops there. But I'm trying to think if there are any we haven't gone yet that we should get to. Are there any topics that you wanted to cover today, Adnan, before we get out of here?
Are we going to talk about Felipe Franks possibly usurping Matt Ryan for the starting QB?
You can go for it, man. Drop the.
No, I already have enough on my plate with that fake reputation.
Yeah, the Matt Ryan hater. Yeah, so it's you got to be careful before you go too far. You know what I'm saying?
I will say though, Matt Ryan, and don't come at me about this, but Matt Ryan didn't really look all that sharp this past weekend. Hopefully it's just a case of a bit of rust. In preseason, it's nothing to panic about. But, definitely you want to see some better throws from him in the preseason.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it hasn't been, I would say there's been some misses by all the quarterbacks. And that tends to happen with a new install on offense. Matt Ryan's overthrown a couple guys. I know a lot of people are like, oh, he has a noodle arm, but it's been more like he's been overthrowing guys, to be honest. So it doesn't seem like it's an arm strength issue, more like a timing issue. But Ryan overthrew Hayden Hurst in the end zone, which on what would have been a touchdown today, and then he hit Hayden Hurst on a really nice throw later in practice. So it's kind of a little bit of back and forth. But I would agree that Ryan hasn't been super duper sharp thus far. I don't think any of the quarterbacks really have, but it's the first week of we're not even 7 days into camp yet. I think we need to see a little bit more before we start panicking about the quarterback group, and I would advise people not to panic.
And I'm just making the comment just because we'll sing Matt Ryan's praises all season when he does something good, but just in fairness, if he does struggle, just in fairness, we do kind of have to mention that as well.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair to bring it up, that the offense has been a little off schedule, more than we would expect. But again, new offense, new install, first day in pads. If you look around the league, there's a lot of offenses that don't look great right now. That's just kind of how it is, and happens every year.
Yeah, and it's the very beginning of training camp, and we'll see. It'll be fun. The first preseason game is about a week from Friday, I think. So that one's against the Titans.
Julio revenge game.
We'll possibly see Julio play if he's not hurt. And I just say that because he missed practice today. So I am very eager to see how they split up those preseason games, because normally you always know the third preseason game is the dress rehearsal game.
Yep.
But this year, is it? I'm kind of shaky on the preseason dates. Is it the third preseason game and then every team has 2 weeks off?
I honestly don't remember.
Or is
I
it
have it on my desktop, though. We'll find out. I have the schedule on my desktop, so let's see.
Because I think that's going to decide. I think the game that's 2 weeks before week 1 will be that dress rehearsal game. I just don't know if that's the second or the third preseason game this year. Yeah,
I think it's the third preseason game is like the 26th, and I think that is 2 weeks away from week 1, so there is an extra week there before the regular season, as far as I can tell. Could be wrong about that, but that's what I think right now. So, yeah, guys, again, thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate you guys. I think that basically covers all the major stuff from today.
Oh, my guy George Costanza had a donation.
Oh, that's right. I can't forget George, my man George. Yep. What do you know? Thanks for spotting that on. I had the YouTube page up, and I don't necessarily see the donos. So yeah, $5 from George Costanza, show benefactor. George, thank you, brother, for your support. We appreciate that. He says, supporting the show Falcons are going to the playoffs, baby. Pitt's going to revitalize Matty Ice. He's going to be an all-pro, and as always, he wants to know what you're drinking, Adnan.
I wasn't drinking anything today, but I
Gotta
will have.
hydrate, brother. Yeah.
Yes, I'll have something new on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Non-alcoholic, of course,
Yes, of
but
course.
something exotic on Wednesday,
Yeah, well,
and
yeah.
big thank you to George, and to everyone who donates. That's the kind of stuff that'll ensure that Kevin doesn't have to sleep in a closet.
It's not a closet, okay? It's a full-size room here. I know you can't tell because there's boxes everywhere, but
Walk-in closet. Yeah.
it's yeah, walk-in at least. Yeah, Dave tried to put me in the boiler room, and I was like, the Wi-Fi is not good enough, so it's not gonna cut it. But yeah, definitely thanks, George. We appreciate that. Thanks everyone else for tuning in. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And if you haven't done that yet, please do. You can check out the Patreon page as well. If you prefer to, donate and support the show on a monthly basis, you also get access to some exclusive perks. So if you want to throw a couple bucks at the show, I think the Patreon is the best way to do it. But that's up to you guys. I don't want to tell people how to support us. That's totally on you. But we do appreciate everyone who even the ones that just watch, just comment, just hang out. That's an integral part of the show. We really appreciate that, guys. And again, thank you guys for your support during training camp. It's been great. Adnan and I just really appreciate everyone interacting and engaging with us while we're out there. It makes it all worthwhile to cover stuff. Yeah, Jason Gaines, thank you. It was really nice to talk to Coach Mike Kershaw of Rice yesterday, or I guess it was a couple days ago. But that interview is up on the Falcoholic page as well. If you guys haven't seen that yet, that was nice. A nice talk with Kershaw there, who was also the punt return coach at Rice. So he was able to give us some insight into Austin Trammell and his wide receiver and special teams abilities. Allegedly, I'll be getting to talk with Trammell himself here soon, possibly on Thursday. So look out for that interview later this week as well. And of course, I will be there tomorrow for the final day before I have to head back to the frozen north of New York State.
It's not frozen now. It's August.
Yeah, it's 100% not frozen right now. But, eventually it will be frozen. Much more frozen than, Georgia ever gets. But except for the ice apocalypse that one time, maybe. But, yeah, guys, we just really appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. Like I said, like and subscribe. Follow the show at Falcoholic Live. And follow my co-host, Adnan Ikic, at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything else you're working on? Anything you'd like to plug before we sign off?
Dave and I had an article this weekend talking about standouts from training camp. And I'm going to re-up that article series looking at the best plays from Falcons history. I think we're now in the Elite Eight. So, that bracket is slowly coming to an end.
Yeah.
And, I'm excited to see how the rest of it shakes out.
Yeah, that's been a fun series. Guys, go vote on that Greatest Falcons Moments bracket. It's getting down to it's hard to decide. Some of those are, I think, pretty tough. So go make your voice heard on those greatest moments. If you have a moment today, do that for sure, guys. And again, do follow Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way, guys. I am Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. I will be at camp again tomorrow. Hopefully, bring you guys some more great videos. If the players cooperate and give me those sweet, sweet shots, and not too many of them get blocked by the field goal post. I think I had at least 2 spectacular catches just right behind the field goal post. But it's how it is sometimes. And again, we appreciate all you guys for tuning in with us during camp this year. We're going to have coverage continuing through camp, even if it's from afar. We're going to have all kinds of preseason coverage, play-by-plays of the preseason games, and of course, tons of work in the season itself as well. So until tomorrow, guys, the live show tomorrow might be kind of late because I have to go to the airport immediately after practice, but we will keep you posted on that. It might be later in the evening. It might be that it needs to wait a day. We'll just see how crazy the airport is and that sort of thing. But we do appreciate you guys. We'll have tons of coverage coming your way throughout the rest of the offseason, and the season itself not too far away either. So until next time, guys, I am Kevin for Adnan and all of us at the Falcoholic. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time here on the Falcoholic Live. Have a great night.